really, the whole course of this investment model relies on all these pieces continuing to work together. So when you place yourself in this puzzle, you
Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are coming here live from an undisclosed location here in Austin, Texas, inside of a tiny home. Really small, but I think hopefully the audio is coming through real well. And you can see outside, we'll probably give you a tour of what we're looking at, where we're in right now. But it's so hot out there. So
yeah,
we wanted to get a view of the outside, but then when we started this the first time, it's just too hot.
We were sweating.
So
bad.
But we're going to bring you some good content on this video. Kenny is an active mobile home investor, a good friend, a YouTuber, has his own YouTube channel. We'll talk about a little bit of that. One of your businesses.
Right.
Let's kind of jump into this.
Let's do it.
I have a cheat sheet right here, so if you see me looking at a post-it note, it's because that's where the questions are. Kenny, so that we sort of understand who you are, how long have you been investing in mobile homes?
I've been investing for 5 years actually in mobile homes, specifically on an institutional level. More so recently using your program over the past year or so. We started speaking quite a bit about it last year, but using your strategy in specific mostly this year and last year. Previous to that, and still currently today, I hold manufactured housing stocks in the publicly traded stock market.
Wow.
Right, on an institutional level. So not only manufacturers, but then I also own companies that own parks, like UMH Properties. They're a massive operator in the Northeast part of the country. So there's several different investments. So when people ask me, do you flip mobile homes? Well, yes, I do, right, using John's strategy. But then I also invest 100% passively by owning stocks associated with the mobile home sector within the stock market.
Wow. So there's a publicly traded stocks
right
of mobile home park investment REITs of the builders themselves.
Yep, exactly. So REITs, which is an acronym for Real Estate Investment Trust, so it's the land that the parks operate in and on and own. So like UMH Properties, that's a REIT, publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, I believe, under ticker UMH. They paid quarterly dividend. Okay, so there's the cash flow there. And then I also own manufacturers like Skyline, manufacturers, things like that, publicly traded. So I own those equities, is what they're called, stock. You own stock in the company, which pays you 100% passive. You can sleep in, don't have to take phone calls from tenant buyers, right? Things like that.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, where's the fun in that? Yeah. What, you get weekends off? What? Yeah, so I invest in the manufactured and mobile home sector that way, but then I also actively, using John's really lucrative strategy there, so he paid me to say that. So.
You're dropping that again.
Yeah, but...
pepper that in a few more times.
Yeah, pepper it in, but wow. Yeah, so... Yeah.
That is incredible. That's really, really fascinating. Most people, they just it's their first entrance into mobile homes is mobile home investing. But right. No, you were open-minded about the space previously, at least 4 years before we worked together.
And that really comes, not that mobile homes drew me in for a very specific reason, but for my investment overall, my specific goals, I think diversification is huge. So if you can invest into a sector in more than one way, prudently, right? You have to make sure you manage your time well, but prudently, I think it's overall a little bit of a better balance if you can do it in several different ways. So you're not relying on one type of business model to make sure that you can cash flow.
Wow. So, okay. Yeah. I think that ties into a question I have just in a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
But we'll get to that. So you are juggling multiple businesses now.
Right.
Do you mind kind of sharing briefly, what those multiple businesses are? Because they take time, they take your focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I own a company called Blue Sugar Holdings LLC. It's a holding company, and all that is, it's a fancy word for a diversified company that owns or holds several investments. So a holding company can own stock, it can own debt, right? It can loan money out to other businesses. It's like a big umbrella, and so I've incorporated under that, and I own a holding company, which I also do the mobile home investing under. So I do that, as well as consulting, as well as YouTube, for those of you that know me from YouTube. So I stay really busy, but it's all things that I love. So, yeah. So.
How do you balance the mobile home business? How do you allocate time? Yeah, well, I guess what's the priority level? How do you know how much time to allocate towards mobile homes? Or have you noticed other areas of your life suffering because you keep adding on more to your plate?
I'm really conscious of that. There's times where I do have to say, okay, I really have to plan better in order to manage it better, just for personal health and, right, happiness. What we're all doing this for is freedom and happiness, right? And so it's really important that I really, like you said, you use the perfect word, prioritize, right? So I have my holding company, my main investments, so to speak, if you want to call them that. Really, they're stacked from most profitable versus time to least profitable, versus time. So mobile homes are kind of right there in the middle. They're not my best bread and butter, but they're also nothing to really put on the back burner either. More lower paying ventures is obviously like my social media and YouTube channel. I do receive income from that, but it's kind of a lower priority compared to my actual investments. Really, YouTube and social media is the vehicle, so to speak, to showcase my other strategies and investments that everyone can learn from, and I can learn from you guys as well. But I do make money from that, but it's lower on the priority list. So
those higher priorities, is that money that you're eating off of? The profits that you make there?
I do a lot of long-term investing, a lot of dividend stocks, income stocks. I own a lot of household names, right? Johnson & Johnson, Clorox, McDonald's, Waste Management. All these stocks pay their shareholders every quarter. Rain or shine, right? For the most part, obviously, if you have to make sure you invest in good companies, that's where a majority of my income comes from, as well as consulting within that sector as well for other investors and things like that. So investing privately into companies, private placements, not traded on the public market. So that's really where all of my main income comes from. And then just below that is mobile home investing, which is of course very profitable and which I do make sure to allocate a good amount of time to. So, yeah.
So you've been investing in mobile homes now for over a year? Well, no, and actively investing.
Oh, actively
in
with your
homes.
strategy,
Yes.
yeah. I'd say, yeah. With your strategy, just this year, actively previous to that, yeah, about a year or two. Yeah.
Have you noticed that the time that you're able, because you said that this business takes time.
It does.
Which does take time.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed a difference from the beginning when you got started to?
I would say it's about the same time, but I'm using the time more efficiently. So when I first started, it's just like any process, right? You pick up a snowboard, you're going to spend a lot more time figuring it out. But then once you have it figured out, you may still spend the same time doing it or practicing or enjoying it, but you're doing more within that specified amount of time. So you get more productive.
What are your goals for the rest of 2019? I was just thinking for mobile homes, what are your goals for the rest of 2019? But if there's anything interesting outside of that, I'd like to know those goals as well. But mainly for mobile home investing, yeah, what's your goal there?
So for mobile homes, my goal for 2019 was 12 homes. And so to some mobile home investors watching this, they might think, oh, that's a high amount. Most probably think that's a low amount. So with this being really kind of secondary to my main income, my main time, and my main job, so to speak, I really think 12 is kind of a big bite to bite off at once. So right now I'm at 6. I just bought one right before I came here to Austin. So that's waiting for me to remodel. So I think, and what are we in July? So I'm one behind right now. Yeah. So will I get to 12? I don't know. So honestly, and this is kind of a weird thing, and I heard this actually from a really successful mentor. It's better to shoot for the stars and not quite make it than set a low goal that's kind of like low hanging fruit. So is 12 a lot for my specific amount of time that I can spend? Yes. Will I get there? Not quite sure, but we'll see. So 12 homes this year to buy and flip.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Next question.
Okay.
Ooh, this is a good one.
Is it? Okay.
That's a good one. Once you get a mobile home to a resellable condition,
right?
You bought the home, you've fixed it, you've cleaned it. How many people through the doors do there typically have to be before someone wants to fill out an application, or how long does that take? Yeah, how many typical people, and then how long does that typically take before you have somebody approved and wanting to buy it?
With my specific experience, about a week. And so I focus really, I really haven't used Craigslist all that much, specifically because of the bots and all the different, stuff you have to filter through, the different, people texting you that aren't obviously interested in the home. They're, just from faraway lands. But so there's a lot of stuff to filter on with Craigslist. A lot of my success has come from Facebook Marketplace. And the biggest thing that in my experience, and I've known this for, selling different cars and selling all sorts of things, is you want to make sure that you list out all the specific great details and features of the home. A lot of times just within your course, John, I swear I'm not, trying to promote this on purpose, but within John's course, it's really true. A lot of people out there, we're all bad at some things, but a lot of people are bad at being marketers. So when you list a home for sale, the way to get in, the way to get apps or interest in it very quickly is be legitimate about all the features it has. Don't embellish anything, but don't forget to mention all the great features of why someone should be interested in buying this home from you. So as long as you do that and you list all the excellent features of why it's a great dwelling, I think you'll get a really quick response. Yeah.
I like what you said before about getting your copy right, knowing, on those ads being descriptive without adding hype.
Yes.
Because when people come and look at your property, I'd rather them be, and almost I'd rather go a little bit, like I want to mention it, but I'm going to say it in a way where it's underwhelming, and then when they get there, let
pleasantly
them,
surprised.
Correct. Sell themselves on it.
Oh, wow, this is nice.
To get to the next step.
And I think you hit a good point. You never want to oversell it too much to where it's the best thing since sliced bread, and then they get there and they say, this doesn't look as nice as the pictures, right? So you can improve your pictures, make sure the lighting is right, but I would say, a lot of times, like if we all go on Zillow.com, for instance, you can page through homes where those photos have been highly edited, and it makes it look like a wonderful place. And it just might not be at that level. So
you can tell there's filters on it.
Yeah. So be legitimate, be realistic, but don't shortchange yourself by just saying 2-bedroom, 3-bath mobile home, remodeled. You want to make sure, hey, nice this, nice that, fresh paint, so.
That, I agree. And don't be afraid to put more in there than less.
Yeah.
I'll say most people probably don't read the entire description anyway.
But just with that much being there, they say, whoa, look at all the features this home has. They might not read through each one, but just seeing that it has more than a sentence or two, and good, clear pictures of each room is, important. So, yeah.
And also, if people don't like something, they don't have to call you, or they don't have to, let them screen themselves out.
Yeah, just automatically through looking at the ad, yeah.
So that is a fast turnaround time for people that are interested in your properties. My question that goes into that, or kind of segues, is when you buy these homes on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being complete, pretty bad, very bad home, or it needs a lot of work, and then 5 being move-in ready, very nice,
turnkey.
How are you buying these homes typically, and how are you? When you fix them up or clean them up, then what condition are you selling them in out of 1 through 5?
Right. Okay. So 1 being needs complete remodel, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So typically across the board, 1s, right? I'm either getting them for free or for a couple $100s, and they've all included free lot rent for X amount of months, which is always nice. Helps with the cost of rehab. So they've typically all been 1s, so to speak, maybe a couple 2s in there. And then when I'm done with them, I'm really careful not to over improve and make it too nice, but they end up being 4s or 5s.
Wow.
Now I've heard of the fabled turnkey where you go in and vacuum. John has talked about it. Other people in the group have talked about it. I have never. I mean, please.
Those are paid actors.
Okay, they're paid actors. Where's the fine print? I'd love to have one of those just drop in my lap, but no, they've all been ones where okay, roll up the sleeves, let's get started.
Then, if you're getting free lot rent, I'm imagining then, and I mean, we obviously know what you're doing, but those mainly are coming from park managers versus the owner occupants in the home.
Exactly. So I've said this on my channel a couple times, and I prefer, just from my experience and going through each stage, I really prefer buying from the park directly. Now that can be bad or good depending on where you are and what park, so I don't want to generalize it too much, of course. But from my experience, and here's why, from whenever, and we all can relate to this, whenever we sell a car, a home, or really any piece of personal property, we always typically have some sort of emotional or really unreasonable, so to speak, value kind of pegged on that item, whether it's a mobile home or car, whatever it might be. And so we might be a little bit more emotional than if it was just a park owner that owns an asset on the balance sheet. Where it's a business transaction, if the numbers make sense, let's sell it, rather than, oh, I spent the last 5 years raising my child in this home, here's where they took their first steps, I'm not taking less than $5,000 for this, right? So it's all been from park owners, directly with the owners, actually speaking with them and coordinating that with the park manager, and they know that, you know, with the way we all operate, we add value, right? And so it's smart of them to give the free lot rent for X amount of months.
Especially if you are bringing them from a 1-star to a 4 or 5,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You want to say, "Hey, come look what I did."
Right. You know, exactly. I've done that.
Right.
I've called up the manager saying, "Hey, are you here?" You know, because you know kind of where they live in the park. "Hey, come on by number 43. Come check out, you know, the new stuff." And that kind of brings it up to, you know, when we talk about improving these homes, is you obviously don't want to over improve them, but you really don't want to cut a lot of corners. You just want to legitimately fix them and legitimately rehab them, not only because you should have pride in your work, but if you're selling this on payment, so to speak, you want to make sure that, you know, that roof patch, you want to make sure that it holds longer than just showing the home. You want to make sure that holds for several more years, right?
Right.
So it's really, you want to align yourself with the buyer's best interest as well. You want to make sure they're getting a good home, and you're not just covering things up that are, you know, if it smells like garbage, don't just plug in a Glade plug-in and all the trash disappears, right? So, yeah.
That's not, even if you're selling it for cash, that's still just not a long-term business.
Yeah, it's just not a good, you don't want to go around, especially in communities where this entire model really relies on doing what you say you're going to do, provide a good value, and, you know, you're going to have repeat customers or their family members. You're going to see people in the community.
Your name will get around.
You don't want to have to look, you know, over your shoulder all the time.
Right.
Yeah. So
if you plan on doing this, yeah, one way or another, people are going to hear about you or going to talk about you.
And so hopefully it's all good things, like, oh, every home that they do, you know, it's brand new toilets or really nice carpet in there, or they make the paint look great, whatever it is, right? Or ease of doing business. That's another thing. You want to make sure it's easy for people to do business with you.
The buyers that we have, the sellers that we have, even the park managers, if there's more investors coming, mobile home investors kind of coming into the market, which I can think most of us can agree that there are.
It's growing. Yeah.
To set yourself aside, I think there's too many people coming in and just putting lipstick on these homes and then reselling them.
Yeah.
Park managers are not stupid. They know that that's happening.
Yeah.
So to separate yourself from a little bit more, and I've seen it first and secondhand experience that park managers do play favorites. Like
naturally.
And sometimes it's because like, oh, I know you, and we BS together, and we're friendly, and we drink together. Right. But other times it's like, no, I want to play favorites because this guy does way better work. Or this person is, you know, they're trustworthy. I know what kind of product they're going to give me.
Exactly. And I look at it this way, and here's an interesting example: is when someone applies to live in the park. Obviously, that's a process. They have to get background check, credit check, and, you know, the application visually in your head, you can imagine it going to all these different places and getting checked and moving back. So really, you know, the whole course of this investment model relies on all these pieces continuing to work together. So when you place yourself in this puzzle, you want to make sure that it's very easy, you know, when the responsibility comes your way, do what you need to do and pass it on to the next person in the circuit, so to speak. You want it to be very smooth, very streamlined, because then people will want to work with you, and they're going to give you the home over someone that says, oh yeah, I'll fix it up, or I'll get to it, or whatever. They say, oh, when I call Joe, he comes, he has his handyman come out, they flip it, they get a good park approved buyer in the home, it adds value to my community. I'm calling Joe every time a home comes up. So
great distinction as well, being, you know, buying from a park versus buying from an owner-occupant. The owner-occupant is going to be much more emotional about that property. Park managers, in all my experience, it's much more difficult to insult a park manager when it comes to the price that you're offering. But you have to be tactful. You have to know, it's not like you're just paying a low price when you buy a home from a park. You can pay that price because the park understands Ken's a sure thing. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. And even if you haven't worked at the park, you know what you're saying. Right. You know how to articulate it. You know your goals are the same as the park's goals. And when you can talk that way to a park manager and they trust you and they like you and they don't want to do it, and it's kind of a layup for them. Yeah. Like it's a, you know, if Ken actually does what he says, it's a layup. So, okay, we're willing to discount the home and give you comped lot rent for X number of...
It makes sense for them as well, right? It's a symbiotic relationship, and I think that's a great term for it. John uses that word. It really is. Not to say that buying a home from a actual homeowner, like an individual owner, is ever a bad deal. There's obviously some great deals out there, great case stories here on the channel of that. It's just that's really a big distinction. People say, well, is it better to buy from a park directly or an individual owner? And there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but that's the main distinction is with the park owner, when it becomes an asset on a balance sheet, it's more of a business decision rather than, like I said, oh, my child took their first steps in this home, it's sentimental. So that's a huge difference. That's one of the major differences, but there's good deals in both.
And don't limit yourself.
Yeah, don't limit yourself.
The people that are asking which one's better, it's like, well, don't sabotage yourself.
Do both.
By not right.
Both. Yeah.
Well, should I be in small parks or big parks, mom and pops or corporates? Like,
everywhere.
Do all of the above. Yeah.
Everywhere.
Or, and when you talk to the manager or the owner, or, if then you don't want to deal with them because they're not a great person, then okay, that's a more valid reason. But just to say, it's this type, or even senior parks and family parks. Like, senior parks have their merit as well.
Mm-hmm.
Are you typically selling for cash, payments, or rent?
Payments. Now, there's a couple instances where some rental units came up, and I actually didn't end up going through the purchase because it just wasn't enough of a good deal, right? John, you've always helped me and taught me that you should really only go after fat deals. I mean, don't turn your nose up to everything, but if you take too many skinny deals, you're really creating, a lot of headaches or really not, a lot of room for error, so to speak, in the future. So with that mindset, only try to take fat deals. There were some rentals that came up and I couldn't get a long enough land lease and I just didn't want to deal with it. So it's kind of still up in the air, right? How is
that one? Is that one still to be determined?
TBD a little for the most part. Now, I just bought this one from the park, so a lot of my concentration will be on that. But just overall, just with continuous marketing, if we can reach a deal. So long story short, the reason I didn't purchase these 4 homes from a private owner, here's a great example of buying from a private owner, is he owned the homes and on this land within the city that was zoned for mobile homes, but outside of a mobile home park, if that makes sense. So it's within city limits, on city utilities, zoned for everything, just not within a community, right? So there's no community manager, there's really no HOA, so to speak, right? No guidelines. So each individual private landowner just owns that lot. Well, he just owned the homes, and family members from out of state owned the actual raw land, and they weren't willing to agree to more than a year or 2 land lease. And so if I'm going to invest money or even take over a home, I want my business model to be able to run for more than 1 or 2 years. So not having that big uncertainty out there, if there's fatter deals out there, I'll take that rather than settling for a gamble. So that's an update on that one.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Okay. So TBD.
So, yeah, TBD. Yep.
What has your experience been? So on your channel, you have a handful of great mobile home videos of just you in the field talking and sharing your experience and walking through some homes.
Right.
I think it's so cool that you have your handyman Jeremiah, or one of your handyman.
Yeah, Jeremiah. Yeah.
Hope it's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He seems to be pretty famous in your, in the videos.
Yeah. People say, have Jeremiah start his own channel. I keep telling him, but he's busier than I am, so we'll see. Yeah. So.
How did it come about? I guess, where did you meet Jeremiah? Have you had any bad experiences with handyman or contractors? What's tips that you would give?
Jeremiah is my go-to guy for all things rehab to mobile home related, and I have a single family rental property that he's going to work on this winter. So the way I found him actually was I put just an ad out on Facebook, not a paid ad, just within the marketplace, within the group, saying, hey, looking for an experienced handyman. I'm a local investor, XYZ, listed out the details. And his wife saw it, and his wife knows me from a previous life, right? She was a coworker. About 10 years ago, we worked for the same company. And so she reached out to me, and I hadn't talked to her in 5 or 10 years, And she said, oh, my husband does that, and he's been doing it for 20 years, and or maybe 15, 20 years, and I'll have him reach out. So we connected. He gave me a quote. I gave him little test jobs, right, as you always instruct people to do, test your handyman. And he was great, very fair with the quote, very knowledgeable, explained why he's doing what he's doing. And so I would say that's one of the biggest risks that people don't spend enough time on when they're in a business model where you're relying on external third parties to make sure that your cash flow comes in. Is Jeremiah is great, and I wish I could clone him and multiply him. So a lot of my success within mobile home investing is because Jeremiah is on top of his game. Now, if Jeremiah gets sick, goes on a family vacation, if something just doesn't work out, gets out of the industry, I am left high and dry. So one of my goals for this year, nothing against Jeremiah, but I have to make sure that I have a backup. And he understands it as well as a business owner himself. He understands that. So when you do find a good handyman, don't stop there. Always have a plan B or C, because there's going to be a point in time where that handyman is going to be unavailable for a myriad of reasons, and there's going to be a kink in your business model. So constantly be thinking about external risks and where you can mitigate those, and making sure you have backup individuals is important. So,
what are 3 traits that you're looking for in a handyman, and then 3 traits that if you saw them, you wouldn't want that person?
So the biggest things I look for, so I'm not an incredible stickler on, oh, he said he'd be here at 3 o'clock and he's here at 3:15. You know, if you're showing up for a bid, first time meeting someone, yeah, I'd make sure they're on time, because that's a sign of respect. And also responsibility. Like, if this person can't show up on time just to a simple bid, how are they going to meet deadlines? But after that, I don't micromanage. You know, if they say it's going to be done by this date, I don't care when or how they come and do it. So I look for general promptness, being on time for the most part, not to the minute, but if they say they're going to be, not like the cable company, we'll be here from anywhere between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., none of that stuff. So I look for prompt, I look for, this is a big thing, and for whoever's watching this that maybe works in the construction industry, maybe you can give us some insight in the comment section down below, but what I always find surprising is these people are incredibly skilled at their craft, but they might be terrible at running their own type of business, right? Like, are they giving me a bid on a regular piece of printer paper, or do they have a legitimate itemized bid with their logo and business name? So that goes a lot. I look at professionalism, because that's going to gauge how they run their business. And when you're hiring these third parties to be a somewhat of a unofficial part of your own business, you have to make sure that they're able to run their business, because if they can't run their business properly, that's going to bleed into your business as well. So I look for professional quotes and bids if they can do that, if they show up with tools to give a bid rather than just eyeballing things, on time and honest. So those are the 3 things that I look for. The things that I don't like to see would probably just be the opposite of that. If they're extremely late to the bid with no explanation, don't really care. I guess I would say unprofessional, just overall, the way they conduct themselves. Maybe if they walk in with filthy boots, or if they park on the grass, which is common, I've seen in some mobile home parks. Right. I just feel they can park wherever. So things like that, right? Little things like that where you're thinking, gosh, you're representing your business, you should probably be aware of those things. Little things like that.
How they do that, well, those small things is sort of indicative of how they're going to do bigger things. Just
right.
How they're treating things, if they're half-assing things, how they're talking to you on the very first interaction.
Right. And none of us are perfect. And especially, you know, with contractors that do a lot of home, look, they're great at what they do, and I don't care, you know, really how they dress too much or what they do outside of their own, you know, when they're on my time, I don't care about that. But I think when you run a business, you should show up fairly, you know, responsible, ready to quote, right? Fairly presentable. So that's a big thing, because it says, hey, I'm taking your time seriously. I'm taking your job opportunity seriously, rather than showing up saying, oh, tape measures in the truck, but that looks about 8 foot. Let's walk it out with our feet, you know. Finish on this this handyman subject is, you want to make sure that they have the tools ready to give you a bid, not just, you know, eyeballing things. I've seen that a lot. I always test different handymen and contractors and things, and you'll have some that show up without a measure, without a tape measure, or without proper things to, don't have a pen. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, do you want my money? I'm ready to spend it with you. So there's things like that where I'm like, come on, man. So.
Would you mind talking about great advice as well?
Thank you.
I didn't want to move on topics without saying that's actually a lot of great stuff. Like,
good.
That's why.
Most of it I learned from you. So.
Well, thanks for saying.
An experience. So.
Do you mind talking about? We've been talking sort of abstract. Do you mind talking about a particular deal? Spend a few minutes just talking about a particular deal. Maybe the acquisition, something that you found that was like surprising in that deal. Just maybe. There's no real average deals, but one that stands out in your mind, and one that's kind of interesting. Maybe one that you learned something.
Yeah, okay.
Probably learning things on all of them, but...
yeah, all of them for sure. So, just an interesting deal in general, or just like an overall deal? The process?
Something interesting.
Okay. I'm trying to think of what would be interesting.
Yeah.
Relative, I guess that's a relative term. Trying to think. So, one that I recently bought for about $975. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Bought it directly from the park. They had just evicted the lady that morning. And I had viewed that home previously because someone, a bird dog actually, a realtor that buys and sells site-built homes, gave me her contact info and said that she had called one of his "We Buy Home" signs. And he said, I don't deal in mobile homes. I know someone who does. So that's another little side marketing tip. Reach out to other people that have those signs out there, and let them know, because they might not have an interest in mobile homes because they don't, that's just not their niche. So I viewed the lady's home, and she said, oh, I'm not going to take less than, I think it was like $4,800. And I kind of, professionally, told her that that's just not within the realm. Of course, tactfully and respectfully. And so she dropped down pretty quick to about 29 or 3, very quick.
This is a 1 or 2 star home.
This is as it was barely livable.
Wow.
I don't know how we all have different ways of living, but I don't know how she was living in it. So it was a pretty terrible home. And it wasn't because I wanted to pay less. It was you have to, and that's another thing when you think about this as a business. You don't just pay what you think is good. You have to really make sure you get the right deal. So I basically told her it wasn't in the cards, and she was insistent on hearing my offer. And again, I politely told her, I said, hey, I'd really rather not offend you. I appreciate your time and you showing me your home. It's just we wouldn't be able to make an offer that would make you happy. And she was very insistent. So I gave her my offer of $1,000, and she immediately flipped and was not happy with me. And I said, that's really why I didn't want to say, but you pull my arm to give you a bid. That's just what we can pay, and we're sorry. And if you can get more, we hope you do. Excellent, no hard feelings. Thank you. See you later. So about a month later, she calls me and she says, will you take X? And it was about, I think it was $2,000. I said, no, we're really stuck at that. And but I said, if you clean up the property and stuff, I can maybe add another $200, right? Because it's going to cost me that to clean the property up anyways. All the trash, all the garbage, cost me several dump runs, a bunch of laborers. So she ended up getting evicted from the park for her back lot rent and fees and all sorts of fines and stuff for about $975. And I'm glad that the park gave me 3 months of lot rent free with that home, because I really needed that to make the overall business dynamic and the numbers work. If I just bought it from her and didn't get any free lot rent, even if I bought it for $1,000, it would have been almost a skinny deal, because even though it had a new water heater and new windows, really the inside, it's basically a 1 star. Everything needed to be redone. Some of the plumbing for the most part, but all of the final appearance features, meaning paint, patching the walls, new carpet, new vinyl, even painting the cabinets. There's doorknobs, little fit and finish. So when you do that on a large 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and even outside work, so it needed a lot of money put into it, but it ended up being a fat deal just because you watch your budget. So I would say that's a really interesting one, because even if you get it for almost nothing, that still doesn't mean it's a killer deal. You have to make sure your rehab costs aren't over. But I also found 2 crematory boxes in there that she had left behind. These weren't urns. These weren't actual urns. They're like straight from the morgue, saying this is this person, date of birth, date of death. And I was on the phone, and the cleaners had gone through, and these were sitting on the countertop in the kitchen. Home is completely empty, right? It's been all junked out. And there are these little boxes that were sitting on the kitchen counter. And it might have even been with you. I was on the phone, so I wasn't directly paying attention to what I was doing. And out of just subconsciously, I looked at those and I thought, oh, those are the recipe boxes that you open, and there's different baking, like a index card box. And that's about the size. I'm like, oh, someone left their recipe boxes. Let me open it. And I'm on the phone, so not paying attention. And right before I open it, I read, it says something like crematory, and I instantly. So I called, I've never ran into that. So I called the park manager, and he said, I've never heard of this either. I don't know if they're legal to possess or throw away. I said, well, I'm not going to toss them in the trash.
Oh, right.
And he said, well, we'll reach out to her. So we've reached out to her several times. She said, the park manager took them. So I don't know what happened to them. But you're going to find some weird things, and I'm sure you've found some odd things in a home. So little things like.
You've proven yourself in this park. They know you. They like you. They want you there. So they.
Right.
Gave you the. Are they calling you?
Yeah, they called me and they said, hey, this one's coming up. Of course, they're respectful of privacy laws. They didn't say which number, they didn't say which person, but they said, hey, we have coming up, an eviction essentially, where we've given her plenty of notice. If she doesn't leave by X day, we're going to call the sheriff. So it was kind of at that point where it's like, you're out today. And so I bought it for them for the fines that they had racked up on her for keeping, disabled vehicles in the yard, rusting, right, on blocks, things like that. So it ended up being $975 that I bought the home for. So
when that one is sold, or is it sold? Or you
just about, yeah.
When you, how long will it take you to break even on?
About 14 months.
Okay.
Yeah, about 14 months. So that's another thing, you know, when you're planning out the down payment and the payments, we had a few people that got approved, and we have a deposit down. We just have to sign the final paperwork, but which is nice, yeah. So I always say it's about sold, but I never consider it sold until it's done. So because things can fall through for sure.
And they do.
Yeah, they do. They do.
I remember a mentor of mine. He's since passed away. It's not closed until it's closed.
Yes.
Not closed until, and I hated that, but he's so right.
You're like, I know.
So keep marketing it, keep advertising, keep showing it until you have money in hand. They've closed, and to be honest with you, they. You know, the person that you're going to sell it to, they should want to close ASAP.
Yeah.
Because if they're apprehensive at all, or why you're showing the home, it's like, because you haven't bought it yet.
Yeah, because the dotted line hasn't been signed.
Right.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times people will inflate their income, or they'll say X, Y, and Z, and it's truly not X, Y, and Z. So that's another thing where, well, gosh, if it was X, Y, and Z, or if they did make this much, and they say they don't have any bills, how can they not make, how are they asking for an extension on the down payment? You know, things like that. So you kind of have to, you'll learn over time thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. So I had a guy call me, and he was talking about income, and he was close to retirement age, and he said, well, I'm not going to get Social Security because I haven't paid taxes in 30 years. And I'm thinking, what? Why would you admit that, first of all? And why would you think that that's a prudent idea, a pathway to go down? But anyway, so I'm thinking, well, gosh, I don't know if I want to sell the home to you. So
maybe he's gotten like denied so many times, like finally putting it out there.
Just being honest.
Just being honest.
Just get it off his
Let's
chest. Possibly. I don't know. But he seemed very comfortable in the fact that he hasn't paid into Social Security with his taxes. I'm thinking, that's going to catch up with you. Yeah. So.
Well, I know. Do you mind? I'm gonna turn on the AC.
Please do, because as you can tell,
beads of sweat. I'm imagining I'm like.
Yes, you are. Your face is very shiny, and I know mine is. So
let's.
I was gonna say that in the comment section, guys. There's no AC on. Where's it at? Oh.
Oh, we haven't been recording. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh. Look, no way. You see the look on my face.
Solid
like,
goal. Yeah. Right.
What?
You just get up and walk out.
I'm done. Yeah.
So if it's a little bit, do you feel it yet?
Already, I felt the draft running down. Oh, that feels great.
If it's a little bit more noisy, we're sorry.
We're in
we can't,
in southern Texas with the AC off.
Yeah. Inside of a hot box.
Yeah.
Well, so the park managers, only have a couple more questions left. And dealing with the park managers, have you had any just, I guess, across the board, any negative interactions with any park managers or park owners that you can think of?
Knock on wood, this is the closest right here out of the frame of the camera. I have not, but I will, and I'm prepared for that. And that goes back to the whole thing is, when you do these deals, even if it's an easy deal, you want to make sure you make a good profit on each deal, because with doing several deals, one might seem like a great deal at first, but then it gets into where, oh, the park manager is being very picky on who they approve, or they're being unfair, so it's costing me lot rent, costing me holding costs. So even though it was a fat deal to begin with, it might not end up being a fat deal. So for every one of those that get, a wrench gets thrown into the gears of your business, you have to make sure that, you can survive to do the next one, financially speaking. So no, I haven't, but I'm prepared. So if I do, because I'm very careful on the selection, so I know it'll happen, but that's okay because I made a good spread on the other homes. So all of them have been great to work with. That's awesome. Luckily, they've all been business minded, so they understand that me being in the park is an asset to them, and just as you guys being mobile home investors, as long as you do good work, they should love you. They should be thankful that you're in their park and not another one. So
they should be.
Yeah.
They're not always.
No.
It's amazing the type of folks that can own parks, because you think of park owners as, if you never owned a park or never dealt with park owners, you can think, oh, they're all super savvy.
Yeah, and successful and smart.
Yeah, like they would do things in a logical, prudent,
right,
rational manner.
Right.
And they have, they have their act together.
Because if they're owning a park, they must have done something right to get to that point to own a park, right? So you would assume. You would assume that they understand, and then you look at the other side, right? Because we can say that, but then you look at the other side, and Think how many, so most of you watching are probably either mobile home investors right now or are interested in becoming mobile home investors, specifically with the strategy that John talks about here on the channel. So that's, you might be thinking, why wouldn't they want to work with us? Well, on the flip side, for every one of us, you guys watching and all of us, for every one of us that is legitimate, we do what we say, we invest, we do it properly, we do everything by the book, so to speak, there's probably one or two other jokesters or clowns that come in and they put a bad taste in that park owner's mouth, right? And so he's like, I've worked with investors like you, I've got burned on it, I'm good, And so you have to be aware that there's people out there that don't conduct business properly, and that might be, they might be having a little bit of a pretense.
Absolutely. If you're going to introduce yourself to enough park managers or park owners, that is 100% going to come up. There's going to be some amount of, well, we got into a relationship like that last year and we just don't want to do that. And again, they're thinking that you are the same joker, the same guy or woman that made the manager's life obviously more difficult. You did do something you weren't supposed to, or you didn't do something, not you, but this other person that burned a bridge with the community.
And it's all about, you got to play the long game. I think in any business, but play the long game, right? Give and take here and there. Always look at homes that are offered to you. You don't want to be on their radar as, Kenny will only take the home if it's this. Always say, well, I'll at least look at it, Tom, or I'll at least go view it. Let's see if we can work a deal. I like doing these, and kind of, be invested with him within that conversation. And they'll even tell you sometimes, when I first started working with one of the most successful, really resources that I found, he even told me, he said, well, we'll give you this one and we'll see how you do. I have some others, but, just from my previous experiences, we'll just see how you do on this. So they might directly tell you, hey, we don't know you, we don't trust you yet, let's do this one deal and see where it goes from there. And that's completely fair for them to say. I'm fine with that. I think this is an important point that John just brought up about biting off more than you can chew. I've seen this a lot, and I'm guilty of this myself on my first mobile home. You're out there, you're hungry, you just want to close on your first mobile home, and you become overwhelmed with emotion rather than logical decision. And we're all humans. We all...
That doesn't happen.
Never. Don't get excited just because there's an opportunity. Make sure it's the right one. So
all those steps and all those things you mentioned with the creation of your company, to getting approved with the park, to making sure it's the right home, to knowing what your buyers
dog park, if there's
like there's so many wrenches. You had mentioned like just wrenches coming like clogging up the deal or stuff. You can do so much right. You can buy it at the right price. You can get it in the right area, and then the park manager could be could throw a huge wrench in the deal and stop you from selling it or slow you down. Or there could be a bunch of mold that you didn't see in the home because you didn't do a certain thing. Or the home has to be pulled out there because you didn't see or you didn't check with the city, or they're behind on taxes, or there's liens, or there's water problems. So it's just
many things.
So there's a ton of that, and you wouldn't necessarily know for the for the folks watching it. Like if you haven't done 50 deals or more, you just don't necessarily know what to look for. And even if you have done 50 deals, there's new things that pop up at different times, and
roof issues, all sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff.
This business is somewhat forgiving, but you still want to stack everything, sort of on your side, and still having those hurdles, that the monkey wrench that kind of comes into the deal. It costs us money, it costs us time. Sometimes it's malicious, which can be stressful. So anyway, it's just like, I thought that was a really good point to maybe just ask a lot of questions. Know what you're buying.
Don't be, and you guys have probably seen John's previous videos. When you walk through and perform due diligence on a potential purchase, you want to run the faucets, flush the toilet. You want to turn the faucet on, but don't just turn it right off once you see it work. Turn the faucet on, let it run, open up the cupboard, see if there's any leaks. I mean, these are just basic things, but you want to go the extra mile because this is your business, this is your money on the line, and you want to be as successful as possible. So don't be afraid to take an extra half hour walking through the home, because at the end of the day, no one's going to care about your bottom line in your business more than you do. No one. I don't care if it's maybe a third party that you're hiring, right? Love Jeremiah, great guy, he's my right-hand man, but he's not going to lose sleep if my bottom line doesn't exactly line up. I'm going to, right? So you have to make sure that you perform due diligence, you work with a handyman that can help you perform it, but you want to make sure that, biggest thing, take full responsibility for all aspects in your business. Never say, oh, well, if they would have done this. No, you have to make sure to take responsibility. This is your arena. And a lot of times, you hear these or you read these business articles, take full responsibility, and it can almost sound like a pep talk that a coach is giving you, but it really is true. Oftentimes when we look back at where we failed at, whether it's life or business, it's easy to blame, well, if I would have done this or if that would have done this, but it all 9 times out of 10 traces back to, I didn't do something that I should have. And it's not fun to admit, but I think the more we can reflect on, what we need to do better as business owners, because that's what we all are when we buy a mobile home and flip it. We're essentially a small business owner. So the more you can take responsibility for, even though it's not fun, the more successful you're going to be, I think.
Agree.
So,
and it's almost freeing, because you can control that. I can't control what Jeremiah will do or what other people will do.
Right.
I'd like to, but I can't. And that's not the way the world works. So it's like you can, just control yourself.
Just control yourself and realize what's in your control. If my handyman doesn't do a good job, well, I have to say, well, he's capable of it, so I must have not set the right expectations. I must have not explained it clearly. I must have, missed something. So I need to go back and where did I, because as the business owner, right, you sit back in all the glory when everything is successful, so make sure you also 100% own all the mistakes as well, right? It's easy for us to show the cash flow and it's great and it's rosy, but take full responsibility for the success and the failures, whether it's from third parties or not. So, yeah, so.
What's one thing that you don't like or even hate about mobile home investing?
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything specific that I hate. Every asset class or every sector or every niche has its own challenges. And I think that's just what mobile homes have. They have their own challenges. They're vehicles. They're not appreciating assets, so to generally speaking. There's stereotypes about them, right? Trailer park boys, we've all seen the show. Things like that. But, other than that, I don't think there's any specifics where I'm just, I hate this, right? That's just part of business, right? There's always going to be things. So I don't think there's anything that I could put my thumb on that I just absolutely don't like about it. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's challenges, but there's nothing that I can, complain about that's going to make it better,
Was there something new that you had to add to your skill set?
I would say. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, you dealt with people before, and is there anything new,
I think the biggest thing that I've learned in this, because I've owned single family rental units and things like that, but I've never owned a business where we're consistently working on a flip. When I do a single family home, it's a much bigger transaction. You typically maybe do one per year instead of one per month. So there's a lot of from A to Z project management that was a little bit new to me. And that's kind of going back to even though there's things that are out of my control, where did I fail on making sure that it was done properly? Because it's still my responsibility. It's still my business. So I would say that's something that I learned is you really have to be detailed on the project from A to Z. Watch cost overrun, things like that. There's a lot of little things that can end up being, to where it was a fat deal, but now it's a skinny deal because you didn't take advantage of maybe certain sales of products you were going to buy anyways, right? Paint rebates, a lot of rebates at Home Depot and Lowe's, things like that. Little things that add up.
Thanks for posting that in the group, by the way.
Yeah. I was shocking, and I normally. A lot of times I'll hate rebates where it's you can only buy this, and on this day you submit this code to this website, do all these little hoop jumping things where it's my time is worth more than what I would save. But that was a good deal on paint. So the rebate was insane, so little rebates like that add up.
Have you noticed, this is a two-part question,
Okay.
Have you noticed any changes in the year and so that you've been actively investing in the mobile home space?
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed any changes when it comes to the mobile home space in the last year? And then have you noticed any changes in yourself? Has this business changed you at all? I guess so those are the two questions.
Right. So I haven't noticed any micro changes. Macro, I think this is a really defensive real estate sector, so to speak. And so what I mean by that is really there's a pretty strong or consistent demand for this type of housing in all economic cycles. So when times are good overall in the broad economy in the United States, these homes, there's always a certain demographic, typically about 25 to 30% of the population, requires this type of housing at this level of income. From several sources. In fact, the video that John recently did, he goes through a lot of the reporting and things, how the mobile home industry has changed. But it's a fairly overall defensive sector because there's people in good times that need this type of housing, and bad times more people will need this type. So it's fairly consistent. Little micro changes here and there I think are probably regional. So I haven't noticed any major waves that have come just yet since I've been doing this actively using your strategy, which is nice. And I think probably because your strategy is really, really detailed. And I mean, I think it's just, I've learned so much from it. And then personally, how have I changed? I think I've become a better investor because we just talked about, you know, having to be a good project manager. And I've invested in all sorts of different parts of the economy, different businesses, different things like that. But this strategy has never been more hands-on in a good way. And it's really taught me a lot about, okay, the bottom line. I'm responsible from A to Z, the top line all the way through down to the bottom line. And what I do in the top line and in the middle will greatly affect that bottom line. So just being more detail-oriented, time management has improved. And I think people who flip mobile homes, either you're going to become really smart with project and cost management, or you're going to get out of the industry. Because you're going to learn some things, and it's going to be really, really good. Because not only do you have to learn just general business practices and, you know, how the balance sheet, personal balance sheet works, but look, you're steering a ship here, and it's up to you to make sure that ship gets from A to B, right? The final destination, and which is the sale of a successful deal. Yeah, so for newer mobile home investors, I mean, just you watching this video says that you're doing something right because you're doing your research on an industry that you're potentially interested in. So for newer investors really getting into anything, you want to make sure that you have your personal financial house in order, right? High interest credit card debt is paid off. You have a little bit of an emergency fund. You have a disciplined budget. You don't have to have an itemized budget and be like a Dave Ramsey superstar, but at the same time, you have to logically think about it this way. How are you supposed to manage a business project from A to Z and do it successfully if you can't even manage your own pocketbook, so to speak, right? If you can't control your own, right? If you're getting paid from a 9-to-5 job now and you're living paycheck to paycheck because you're not sure how to manage your own money, how are you going to run a business, right? So that's a big thing as we talk about the great cash flow, and you can make a lot of money doing this business model, but you have to make sure that, you know, you can manage your own finances. And that's a little bit of a test, right? Saying like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym and do all these crazy workout, take these crazy supplements. Well, first let's just see if you can stick to a 3 to 5 day schedule of some treadmill and maybe some light calisthenics, so to speak, right? So if you can do that, then you can step up to maybe operating a business, which is what you're doing when you invest in these things.
So such a good point.
Yeah. So
that is such a good, decent barometer of, or sort of litmus test if, you know,
right,
if you're ready to start, because you are starting an entire business from scratch, and you're planning on helping other people, or, you know, building yourself up to a certain cash flow,
your reputation, everything, right? And so. You know, and the biggest thing, and you know, I hit on this because I do a lot of consulting in, you know, within the financial industry, but the biggest thing that I've seen is people leverage, so to speak, meaning they pull all the strings they can in their personal life just to come up with barely enough money to do the first deal. And unless everything goes right within that first deal, they're going to be in a very, you know, between a rock and a hard place. So make sure you have your own personal emergency fund. Make sure that you have some money set aside for your own bills, for own home repairs that you have. Make sure you don't have any high interest credit card debt. Make sure you're not doing mobile home investing to somehow pay off a credit card, right? Things like that. So I know we've probably repeated ourselves and hit on this a lot, but I think it's really important because and you know, we're all guilty of this at one point when we listen to this type of basic financial advice and people say, oh, but I'm different. You know, I'm going to do it. No, really make sure you have your personal financial life in order, so to speak, before you jump on to investing in mobile homes. Make sure you take, I always like to say, risk is good and bad. Calculated risk is great. Blind risk is bad. So when you jump into it, some higher level stuff, which is investing in general, you're taking blind risk or bad risk if you don't have your foundation, your financial foundation set up. So it's huge, yeah. So that's it.
That's it. That's a wrap.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For being here. If you have any questions, you can reach me at john@mobilehomeinvesting.net or mobilehomeinvesting.net. You have a channel?
If you in YouTube, just Kenny Robinson channel, Kenny Robinson, you'll see my videos pop up.
Thanks,
Thank you.